Today we finally get to talk about the AFC for predictions versus reality, and we can't start with not much of a worse football team than the fourth place team in the AFC East, the New England Patriots. The fall from grace is in full swing in Foxborough. We're going to talk about where I had them in August, what happened with their season, what went wrong, and then we're going to talk about what now, how can they get better. But before we begin officially, all right, and welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take. Welcome in to Predictions versus Reality. The offseason series continues and begins its final episodes. Well, I shouldn't say final episodes. We're halfway there, so yeah, more. That's really not the final part. That's not a great intro there. I apologize. But for those of you that do not know what Predictions versus Reality is all about, I kind of explained what's going to be happening at the start of the video. I made a scheduled prediction video for every team back in August, so we're just going to look back on that, compare it to what they actually did this year in 2024, and look at how they can get better for 2025. But let's get right into it. Actually, one more thing before we begin, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. It would help the channel out tremendously and help me spread my football platform to more and more people on the internet. I would appreciate it if you would do that. It'd be awesome. But let's get right into it now with the New England Patriots. Where did I have them in August? I had this team projected to go 3-14. Why? Well, considering what they went 4-13, here's why. Their roster was putrid, genuinely awful. They only had 2 to 3 really good players, a slightly bigger handful of starting caliber players, but that's it. And nothing accentuated that more than the offense, which is most expected, ended up being one of the worst in the NFL. The other thing I mentioned back in that video back in August was the disappointment in bringing in Gerard Mayo. I know that he was filled in there in the contract when Bill Belichick was set to retire, and I get it. You want to try and maintain the same culture, identity, and philosophy that's been, it's built the dynasty that it has been the New England Patriots for the past 20 years. I get it. I really do. But that being said, the NFL had finally figured it out, caught up with it, and have since left that entire idea in the dust ages ago. And they had left it after Brady had left. In 2020 was a disaster. Well, 2020 wasn't a disaster. Mac Jones, they went 12 games. But then after that, it just went to absolute doo-doo. So the philosophy is gone. They needed to make a new shift, in my opinion. Get a new coach, get a new philosophy, establish a brand new culture, a brand new identity for this football team. And they chose to keep it the status quo, and it got them to another bad, horrible season. One of the worst seasons in Patriots history in a very, very long time. So, that being said, what actually happened with the New England Patriots? Is there anything else I want to mention? No, that was it. So what happened? So, they actually went 4-13. So, they won one more game compared to where I had them projected. That's not saying much. Their offense ranked 31st, their defense ranked 22nd, and their 3 best wins were Week 1 at Cincinnati. They won 16-10 in a pretty shocking win. I was honestly not expecting them to win that at all. Then middle of the year, or near the end of the year, they beat the New York Jets 25-22. And then near the end, they beat Chicago 19-3. So that was their 3 out of their 4 best wins. That's not really good. That's not really good when your 3 best wins are 3 out of your 4 only wins on the year. But that being said, this season went exactly as I thought it would for the New England Patriots. They were going to be horrible. This offense was going to be god-awful. I expected it. Even with Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson at running back, they had nothing at wide receiver. Literally nothing. It's a bunch of low-end wide receiver 4s or 5s playing 1, 2s, and 3s. And then your second-round pick, Jalen Polk, and then your 4th or 5th-round pick out of UCF, I can't remember what his name was. If you give me a second, I can find it. Where was it at? Give me 1 second. I am so sorry. I know it's somewhere. Javon Baker, that's what his name is. Yeah, Javon Baker and Jalen Polk weren't even used. They barely saw the field at all, which is disappointing because when you're a bad football team, you usually want to lean on your younger players, and they didn't seem to do that. But then again, the Patriots have never done that. So, hey, whoop-de-doo. Guess what? Old philosophy, outdated. It's been left in the dust years ago. Anyways, so they finished 4-13. Their season was just terrible. It was just absolutely terrible. I have no other words to describe it, honestly, and I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this segment at all, if I'm being 100% honest with you. And it's totally not because I didn't reorganize. I totally forgot to reorganize the script before recording this video. Anyways, so everything went wrong. I mean, the offense was terrible. The defense was terrible. There was only a few bright spots on this team, and that was it. They just lost, and Gerard Mayo was fired, and there was that. Literally anything and everything that could have went wrong for the New England Patriots went wrong. All of it did. I mean, coaching, we'll start there, was awful. It was just terrible. There's a reason why he was fired. Outside of a few games, they really never looked competitive. They never figured out how to use their players, and they never produced results. And when you're the successor to Bill Belichick via a contract, that's how much they believed in you, and you did not provide results. Being right or wrong, having this type of year was going to carry more emotional weight to it, because apparently they had really believed in Gerard Mayo. So after that, in the year that they had, and they let him go, it's not ideal. I know that some people are mixed about the Gerard Mayo firing. I think it needed to happen, not because I wanted Gerard Mayo to fail, and I believe that he deserved another year to at least see if he can improve. But when you look at the philosophy, you needed to go in a new direction, and I thought when they fired Gerard Mayo, they were going to do that, but no, they ended up hiring Mike Vrabel, which is a whole nother basket case of information I want to talk about at the end of the show. The next thing is just bad drafting. From 2018 onward, the Patriots have never had a great draft. They've had a couple of good ones, but especially with their first and second round picks, they've never been able to draft a true superstar until Christian Gonzalez. And you look at the roster now, what do they have? They lack elite top-tier talent, and if you cannot draft in the first or second rounds, that is not going to work. That's something that will always drive a team into the ground. If you look at the worst teams in the NFL this year, what do they all have in common? They all have had terrible, terrible drafts. So if you can't build your team and build young players and put young players in the right positions to succeed and get the right guys, you're not going to win. But also for the Patriots, this is an issue that brewed for years, even before Belichick left, before it reared its ugly head. And it has in a huge way. I mean, I mentioned 2018 onwards. 2018 wasn't a good draft. 2017 was probably their last decent draft. And even then, I don't even think I would call it great. So they've always been devoted to drafting, developing, right, and just picking players. But now they needed to pick players to really build their roster, because with Bill Belichick being gone, the good quality coaching is gone. The great quarterback is gone. And so you can't just get away with just drafting whoever you want and developing them and producing results. That doesn't work anymore. So it was bad. It was all bad. I'm not doing a really good job with this video. I'm really sorry. But at the same time, I don't want to restart. I think I can fix it and get better. Moving on to the offense, absolutely awful. Jacoby Brissett was terrible. The running back duo of Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, they were pretty good, but they lacked explosion and consistency. And I mentioned the wide receivers. There's simply none of them are starting quality right now. None of them. None of them are worth being starters. All of them are wide receivers 4 or 5. And then I mentioned Jalen Polk and Javon Baker not even being used, because in you're a bad team, you usually go to your young players to see what you have in them. And guess what? They barely even use them. I think Jalen Polk only caught 12 or 13 catches on the entire year, which is terrible. For a second-round pick, that is terrible. And that's not the first time they've drafted a receiver over a really good one in front of them and have it backfire. Remember, what was his name? Oh, my God. N'Keal Harry. Remember N'Keal Harry? Yeah. They still had A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson. Those guys were still all on the board after N'Keal Harry left. And then you look at, they traded for Jalen Polk, and they traded up with the Chargers to go take him. And then who did they pass on? Who the Chargers ended up picking not too far after them? Ladd McConkey. They did it again. The Patriots are one of those teams that just cannot draft receiver and develop receivers for the life of them. They have not been able to. You think about the best receivers the Patriots have ever had. You think of Randy Moss, Wes Welker. Julian Edelman was one that they drafted. Fine. But you look at Danny Amendola, all the receivers that they had in that rotation in the mid to late 2010s. And then you look at, even in the early 2000s when the Patriots dynasty first got kickstarted, they were all free agent wide receivers. They were all receivers they brought in from other teams, and they were able to get the most out of them there. They've never been able to truly draft great wide receivers. Not at all in their history. They've had a couple. There was one that played in the 80s and the 90s that was pretty darn good. But outside of that, there's been next to nothing there. There's been literally next to nothing. And there you go. And then tight end wise, Hunter Henry, he was fine. Not great, but he was productive. He's going to be on the team next year. So he's at least a tight end that you can rely on and be a security blanket for you. The fourth thing was the offensive line was just so god-awful it wasn't even funny. The players they've drafted over the past few years simply have been garbage, and the only guy that's been decent was Mike Onwenu, who had to switch into guard because he was so bad at right tackle. So, yeah, bad offensive line play is going to kill your entire offense and in turn kill your entire team. And another common trend, if you see a bad football team, they're going to have a bad offensive line 90% of the time. It's almost a guarantee. So, that's also a contributor to bad drafting. That's also a contributor to really not utilizing free agency properly. And then the defensive side, it simply wasn't much better. A few players did play well, but everyone else at best was mid. This defense, though, I will say, could have been better if this offense was better. And we saw that the defense did slightly make an improvement once Drake May became the starter for the New England Patriots. But at the same time, I don't know if it would have made a significant jump to make them win 4 or 5 or 6 games. Or well, they have won 4 games, so maybe not 5 or 6 or 7. I doubt it would have been that much of a jump. But at the same time, you got to be pretty happy with Christian Gonzalez. He had an all-pro level year. And on a bad team, it's going to hurt your status and your recognition. But I will say that Christian Gonzalez is an elite corner. And that is a guy that you want to build around and keep around for as long as you can. So if I'm New England, that's one of my key cornerstone players. That's a guy that I'm looking at to develop and get better in the future. But there is a lot of holes to fill on this unit. And the final thing that really went wrong for the Patriots was that they not starting Drake May in week 1. It ultimately, in retrospect, was a mistake. When I talked about them in August, I was like, well, I don't want to start Drake May because he's going into a terrible situation on offense. But at the same time, this offense is so devoid of talent. You might as well do something to make it look watchable and interesting. At least Drake May would make it the offense and make the team worth somewhat watching because he's a 3rd overall pick. And when Jacoby Brissett was in there, the offense was just straight up boring. It was straight up terrible. It was boring to watch. I only watched a couple of New England Patriots games in 2024 because they were so bad. That was it. The 2 times I watched them, they were just, no, it wasn't even worth watching. They were so bad. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't worth watching. It was a boring football team. And all those mentions, all the things that went wrong for New England, all contributed to having a terrible offense and a terrible football team overall. So, what now? How can the Patriots improve to get better? Well, the first big move they did to fix this team and rebuild it properly, I guess, was to hire Mike Vrabel. This is the hire that everyone wanted to see since he was fired by Tennessee. It was penciled in that he was going to go back to New England after he was fired immediately, and then months went by, wasn't picked up, and next thing you know, he's got a year off, he's with the Browns, and now he actually lands in New England to be the Patriots. Now, everyone's like, oh, you're getting a great coach. This is going to be the right coach for the New England Patriots. Pump your brakes. I'm going to tell you right now, pump your brakes. I am extremely skeptical about Mike Vrabel going to the New England Patriots. The first thing is, well, you talk about, I mentioned the Patriots need to move on to a new philosophy, a new culture, whatnot, and Mike Vrabel does not really fit that mold of doing something new. This feels like another, we want to have that same Belichick-y type of culture. We want to have that type of philosophy. And the thing is, it's outdated. It is outdated. And hiring Mike Vrabel is not going to fix that, right? He's a good football coach. He will get this. If he was coaching this team in 2024, they probably would have won 6 games at most, which isn't saying much. But at the same time, he is a good football coach and will improve this team. That being said, I've never really talked about why I never gave my full reason why I'm not super high on Mike Vrabel ever since the move was made. He's a great football mind. He's a great leader. But if you ask me, I can tell you with great detail as to why Mike Vrabel, I'm so skeptical about this move. The thing was, when he took over the head coaching, when he took the head coaching job in Tennessee back in 2018, Mike Vrabel had taken over a playoff team. The Tennessee Titans had just won a playoff game, the game in Kansas City where Marcus Mariota threw a touchdown pass to himself. That game, that was the year before Mike Vrabel came in to be the head coach. So he already inherited a team that was playoff caliber and ready to win. And then you add a couple pieces here, add a couple pieces there, add some veterans here and there, and then you get 2019 where you had your run to the AFC Championship, and then 2 straight years of winning the division in 2020 and 2021, which included the number 1 seed that year, right? So he took over a team that was already ready to win. And then after 2019, when a bunch of their veterans left and retired, they had to really retool their team and get younger. And if you want to talk about bad drafting, well, the Titans have not been good at drafting players ever since that year. 2019 was one of the greatest draft classes of all time for that franchise. 2020, there's no one. 2020 and 2021, there's only one player that's still on the roster out of those 2 drafts. And that's Dylan Radins, who was a 2nd-round pick, and he's set to be a free agent. And even then, he's not that great. He's an average starter. Everywhere else, it was bad. First-round pick in 2020, Isaiah Wilson, one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history. You look at the next one in 2021, Caleb Farley, the corner out of Virginia Tech. He was also garbage. He constantly stayed hurt, could never get on the field. And when he was on the field, in the spare time he was straight up garbage. So you have that. The drafts were not terrible. And people want to talk about, Mike Vrabel has this terrible roster in Tennessee. It's not his fault. He's the head coach, guys. Everyone's saying Mike Vrabel wasn't the problem in Tennessee. What are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? I'm going to rant about this for a second. Here's the thing. For people that were defending Vrabel, they got no clue what they were talking about. Mike Vrabel was not innocent in the draft room for the Tennessee Titans. I know that Mike Vrabel and general manager John Robinson did not get along, apparently, and they had beef and clashed over, who was going to do who, and apparently it was John Robinson that traded A.J. Brown. Mike Vrabel didn't want it to happen, but guess what? All those draft picks, Mike Vrabel had an input in. He had an input in Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley, Traylon Burks, right? He had involvement in all of that. He's the head coach. He's the head coach of the football team, and if you guys remember, in 2023, after John Robinson was fired, he wanted more power in the organization and got that power. And where did it get them? 6 wins. 6 wins and another terrible roster. Why? Because they tried to continue to be competitive instead of tearing it all down and going into a rebuild. And guess what? When you try to go down both 2 paths, you don't go down any, you go down the wrong path. And that is what happened. Mike Vrabel was not innocent in all the bad roster moves that Tennessee made over the past few years before he was fired. He was not innocent at all. And I don't know, I'm tired of people defending him for that. Defending him, saying it wasn't his fault. No, part of it, a big part of it was his fault. You're the head coach of an NFL football team. You are a head coach of an NFL football team and you don't have say in who your players draft or have input or knowledge? Get out of here. That's a load of BS. A big load of BS. And here's the thing too. His philosophy, we talk about the philosophy of the New England Patriot way, right? Of that being outdated. Well, his coaching philosophy is also outdated. You look at what he wanted to do on offense in Tennessee. It was run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, heavy play action, which this year kind of proved, hey, you can do that still. But at the same time, this team grew to learn only one way. After A.J. Brown left in 2022, 2023, those 2 years, this team only learned how to win one way, and that was to play great defense, drag your opponent through the mud, and win 13-10. That was the Vrabel philosophy. And you want to talk about an offense with a 2nd-round pick in Jalen Polk, 3rd overall pick Drake May, 2 good running backs, Hunter Henry at tight end, right? You want an offense that's really not high pass volume. Drake May was more of a pro-style quarterback at UNC, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that. But either way, it is a passing-based league now. And even 2021, when they went 12-5 and onward, when you look at the rates of like passing numbers and passing production, they were among the bottom in the NFL. It was among the bottom. And so you look at a third overall pick in Drake May and you pair him with Mike Vrabel and you look at the terrible offenses the Tennessee has had. Is that really the type of philosophy and scheme that you want with a young quarterback? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And there's a scenario here where it works out, but also equally, I can see a scenario where this blows up in the Patriots' faces because you have a young quarterback. Why would you sign a defensive-minded head coach? Why would you get a defensive-minded head coach to work with your young quarterback? A guy that has an outdated philosophy on offense, a guy that shares the philosophy of the New England Patriots, that Patriot way ideal has been outdated. So why would you go and get that guy? And not to mention, this is the biggest one. This is the biggest one. So as I get ready here, Mike Vrabel also is a very stubborn guy. He is a my way or the highway type of guy. So I talked about the power struggle with him and John Robinson wanting more power in the organization, and look where it got him. You look at, for example, 2020, where they didn't have a defensive coordinator. 2020, Tennessee didn't have a defensive coordinator, and lo and behold, their defense was one of the worst in the NFL that year. Whoop-de-frickin-do, right? And then this is a story that not very many people know about, but if you remember the 2019 AFC Championship game, do you remember the long touchdown run Patrick Mahomes went on before halftime? A bunch of Titans players were missing tackles. It was a great play by Mahomes, but also it was a very terrible effort job by the Titans defense. Well, in the second half, Mike Vrabel stole play calls away from defensive coordinator Dean Pease, and guess what? The defense simply did not perform as well in the second half of that game, where the Titans, mind you, in that game, in the first half, had a lead. They had a 2-score lead in Kansas City at one point. And Mike Vrabel took play calls away from Dean Pease, and guess what? The defense did not perform nearly as well. And also, you mentioned, if you remember, before he became the Titans head coach, he was the defensive coordinator for the Texans for 2 years. Both times, the highest he was ever ranked, his defense was ever ranked in Houston was 30th. The highest. That was the absolute highest. So as a defensive coordinator, he was not good. He was not a good defensive coordinator at all. So you get a guy like that who takes away play calls in the game before the Super Bowl. No, this is not the guy. I like Mike Vrabel as a coach, and I think he's going to get this team better. But I don't think this is the guy that the New England Patriots needed to bring in to change their team and rebuild it. He took over a team that was already a playoff team, and when it was time to retool and upgrade the team and really draft and get youth into the building to replace all the veterans that left and that got them to the AFC Championship in the first place, he wasn't able to do that. Obviously, that wasn't all his fault, but to say that he was innocent and people saying it wasn't his fault are ludicrous. He had a big part to play in that, and he deserves a fair share amount of blame for that. Not to mention, his philosophy on offense is outdated, which doesn't look well with a third overall pick, Drake May. And then you look at all the stuff that I mentioned with him being a stubborn, my way or the highway type of guy. You look at all those, and that's not a head coach that I think is that's the right head coach for the New England Patriots where they're at. Mike Vrabel, if he would have went to LA with the Chargers, he would have gotten to the playoffs like Jim Harbaugh would have. That's the type of coach that Mike Vrabel is. You can hire him and with a roster that's already ready to go and compete, and he will take you there, take you over the top, and make you a contender. He can do that. He really can. But looking at his track record of being able to build a roster properly and retool, look at what he did in Tennessee. It was not a good product. It was not a good result, and I don't know. I just don't get it. I just simply don't get why Mike Vrabel was the right hire for the New England Patriots. If anything, I don't think it was, which is why I'm very skeptical. That being said, he is a good head coach, so we're going to see what happens, and I think this team will improve. They're not going to win 4 games. I think they might win 5, 6, maybe 7 if they have a good free agency and draft. They got a lot of money to spend. They have the most cap space in the NFL, so we'll have to see. But given all the ups and downs in Tennessee, that's not a guy that I'm looking at that's like, oh, I feel confident about that hire. I really don't. Time will tell to see if I'm right or wrong. But there's so many things that went wrong in Tennessee that deserve, blame to Mike Vrabel that people just completely overlooked and refused to acknowledge and talk about because Mike Vrabel was the only thing outside of Derrick Henry that people talked about when they talked about the Tennessee Titans. That was it. That was literally it. So there you go. That's my full rant on Mike Vrabel. That being said, let's talk about the big three. How can the Patriots, for real this time, actually get better? Well, let's start with the big three. The big three, number one, is offensive line. You have to draft Will Howard with the 4th overall pick. I feel like even though he's not the 4th best player in the draft, you have to take him. You have to take him because your Ross offensive line was the worst in the NFL. Was the worst. So you need to get a tackle and start building that spot. You have a couple free agents available. I would bring a couple guys in, right? Draft Will Howard at tackle and at least make this offensive line somewhat resembling an NFL quality offensive line. If you can't get that, this team is not going to do well at all. So fixing this is absolutely paramount. Should be the number one thing that the Patriots attack in free agency and in the draft. The second one is wide receiver. Like I mentioned, you have Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, who are young receivers. You should play them next year to see what they have. And all the other receivers on the roster are depth players. So you need, in the second round, to go get another receiver. Get one in free agency as well. T. Higgins is officially off the market, but maybe you pay money to a Chris Godwin, or maybe you bring in a veteran like Amari Cooper, right? You need some real talent and production at that receiver group. You need it. Because if you want Drake May to improve, that's what you're going to have to do. And the reason why offensive line and wide receiver are the two biggest needs on this team is because they need to build around Drake May and put a lot of resources into it to make sure that he is successful there in New England. Because right now, if they don't do what they need to do, Drake May is going to fail just like Mac Jones did. And you do not want Mac Jones 2.0. You want to get past that. So here we go. Those are the two big needs. The third one is defensive line. I know they took an edge rusher in the second round this year. I think his name was Keon White. Can't remember where he came out of. But other than that, I mean, they need help. This defense, if they don't have a good edge rusher, defensive tackles are mid. They really need premium positions. So edge rusher is the next one. You get a good pass rusher, help out the secondary a little bit, which was the better part of the Patriots defense. So you build on the worst part of your defense and improve that unit, and you get two positions of need that are high quality, that are premium to help build around Drake May. Those are the three things that they need to do. They have a lot of money in free agency. I'm not saying you got to go spend all of it. Don't spend all your money in one place, right? But at the same time, they really need to overhaul this roster, and it is going to take at least 2 years for this roster to finally be ready to truly compete for something significant again. It's going to take that amount of time because this roster is literally devoid of talent. It is devoid of talent. It is the worst roster in the NFL. Straight up, it is the worst roster in the NFL because they have little to no talent on it whatsoever. Anyways, to wrap it all up, this team will improve under Mike Vrabel. They will get better. There is no doubting that. They're not going to finish 4 wins or lower in 2025. I can guarantee you that. But what I can't guarantee you is this Patriots team getting a significant improvement. I'm looking at a team that, if they do the right moves, could be a 7-win team at best. Maybe 6 wins. That's what I'm looking at. And I know Patriots fans don't want to hear that. But look, I'm very skeptical about the Mike Vrabel hire. This could be a really big, really good move, or it could be a really, really bad move that sets the franchise back even further than it already has been set back. So you're taking a big risk here. I think you should have went in another direction and went completely brand new, but you didn't do that. So time will tell to see what happens. But man, it's a tough situation. It's a really tough situation. It'll be interesting to see what they do because all the capital that they have in free agency and for the draft, right? So it'll be a team to be interested in, to follow and invest in a little bit. But by the time the season rolls around, we're going to really know what this team is about. We're going to really know if Mike Vrabel is the right coach or not. In year one, we're going to know. I'm telling you right now, year one, we're going to know. And if it's bad, oh well, you made the wrong choice. But that's a conversation for a later, much later date. With all that being said, that will officially do it for me today. Sorry that this video wasn't that really good. I was trying to fix it and make it better. I think I did at the end with a Mike Vrabel rant. It's one of my better rants that I've talked about in recent times. But that will do it for me. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you guys liked it, make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button. It helps the channel out tremendously. It only takes a couple of seconds. Helps me grow my channel, helps me grow out my football passion and spread it to more and more people. And also let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, making sure that you get everybody locked in and locked on to the Shumake Take podcast. Also sharing the video as well also helps. So I got great content coming out for you guys every single week. Tomorrow I am off of work, so I'm going to be dropping a bunch of videos off of Wednesday and Thursday. Also, I will be recording my news episode, the news. So we're going to be hearing that tomorrow. And until then, guys, hope you guys have enjoyed it. I will see you all next time.